and then interpret the results and revise them in the face of exceptions to the rule. That's how scientifically we make sense of the world. We experiment, we generalize what that result means, and then we take feedback when we see new results or exceptions. We feed them back in and adjust our generalization accordingly. So that's the different ways in which people who delete, distort, and generalize work. And of course, I have to add, all of those three definitions, all of those three sets of characteristics are, of course, themselves generalizations. We're going to take a little more detailed look at deletions, distortions, and generalizations in just a moment. But first, let's have a little bit of music. That's the Pet Shop Boys there with their cover of Elvis Presley's Always on My Mind. And that's actually a great example of a distortion. Basically, the Pet Shop Boys heard Presley's original Always on My Mind and decided to create their own arrangement of it. In order to do that, they had to distort the original. And in order to even be able to think of creating their unique arrangement of it, they had to be able to have the sensory distortion to be able to imagine how that song would sound in a different arrangement. So we've talked about deletions, distortions and generalizations. We've had a bit of an overview of them. I want to dive into each one in a little bit more detail now. Give some more examples of what they are. And then later on we're going to take a look at how we can use language to really, really unmask the deletions, distortions and generalizations, and to really uncover what's actually going on. So hold on tight. This is going to be an awesome ride. The deletions. Language will very often show all of these happening. So let's take deletions. They know enough about it. They know enough about it. What does that mean? It's very vague. There's a lot of deletions going on in there. Who are the people? Who are the people? What is it they know about? How do we know enough is known about it? What is enough? What is it? So deletions. We're deleting lots and lots of information in there. Now, sometimes we'll even delete even more from that information. So instead of people know enough about it, we might, or if we were to say people don't know enough about it, we might delete even more and just make it even more vague using the passive voice. Anyone who knows grammar will know the passive voice. So we might say something like, not enough is known about it. Not enough is known about what? By whom? And how much is enough? There's so much deletion going on there. A great example of a deletion, which I'm pretty sure every single one of us will have heard. Governments use this all the time. Mistakes were made. Lessons were learned. We've all heard those, right? Mistakes were made, lessons were learned. Mistakes were made by who? What lessons have been learned? Who's learned those lessons? How did they learn the lessons? So much information there is deleted. Hence, deletions. Now, of course, we need deletions because conversation would get, let's face it, conversation would be incredibly tedious, dull and boring if we spelled out everything in great detail for every single statement that we make. So there are always going to be some deletions. However, when the details that are important are deleted, that's when it can become misleading, for example. People can be misled because of the deletions, because when we hear a sentence and stuff is deleted, we kind of backfill some of that information ourselves. They don't know enough about it. We kind of backfill ourselves who they are. We backfill how much enough is. And that can sometimes cause problems. And we'll take a look in more detail about several categories of deletions in a short while. But one particular category of deletions is comparisons. Again, we'll look at comparative deletions and such like in a bit more detail soon. But whenever we use sentences with things like more, less, better, best, worse, greater, all of these things, they're all having comparisons in them. And the thing is, with whom or with what is the comparison being made? Yeah? With who or what is the comparison being made? Oh, they are much worse. They are much worse at it. Much worse than whom? Is it a valid comparison? And again, in a moment, we'll take a more detailed look at some of these, which will give you more insight into what's going on there. But just start to be aware that sometimes these deletions can be harmful, because if we're putting in a comparison, we might be comparing at one level, but somebody else is comparing at a different level. We might be comparing with, for example, an enthusiastic amateur. The person who's listening, perhaps the person receiving this as feedback, might be comparing with a seasoned expert. And so they see a much, much different gap there, which can cause significant problems. It's a great way to become really despondent and really frustrated, is to compare yourself with an imaginary, unattainable ideal. compare yourself with perfection. It's a great way to become really demotivated, right? I mean, it goes back to things that we've spoken about in the past, comparing ourselves with others, comparing ourselves with what we believe others would be. And again, we can get those same sorts of things with these comparative deletions when we're comparing against things, but we don't even say what we're comparing against. So not only are we allowing ourselves to be judged as falling short, we don't even know what it is that we're falling short. Are we falling short of something which is valid, or are we falling short of something which, quite frankly, nobody could ever attain anyway, and therefore we shouldn't be that worried about falling short? Ooh, good stuff, eh? So that's deletions. Let's take a slightly more detailed look at distortions. And we very often with distortions, we'll do what's called nominalization. That's that big word. Nominalization. It's taking a process and making it into a thing. So it's turning a verb into a noun. We're nouning verbs, if one can put it that way. That's how we distort stuff. So I mean, a lot of our concepts are nominalizations. Belief, choice, fear, memory, justice, love, education, they're all distortions. And the distortion is that these nouns are actually verbs in disguise. It's a process that's become frozen in mid-step. And the trouble with a nominalization, I'll say that again, the trouble with a nominalization is that they're static, which makes them unchangeable because they're frozen in time. Give you an example. This relationship isn't working. Our relationship, it just isn't working. Ooh, a big one to hear. But the problem is, we've taken the verb to relate. So we've taken the action of relating, which is a process, it's an ongoing thing, and we've frozen it in time as a relationship. And we've said this relationship isn't working. We're distorting such that the implication is it is not possible for us to relate in a way which works. We've distorted it such that we're suggesting it's not possible, or we're not even suggesting, it's just unconsciously there is the implication that it is not possible for us to relate in a way which works. Now that can be a massive blow, right? It's kind of ruling out any possibility of fixing things, of changing things, of adjusting things. Massive distortions there. The distortions, they can often encompass massive assumptions. See that Fred? He is just as untrustworthy as all your other friends. Oh, not only is that a bit unkind to poor old Fred, but not only that, it's also assuming that all of your other friends, we're generalizing, all of your other friends are unreliable. Really? Are they all unreliable? Are they always unreliable? Is there not a single instance where a single one of them has been reliable? We're ruling all of that out. Yeah. So you can see how distortions can start to cause lots of problems. Distortions, assumptions are at the root of many distortions. Distortions are at the root of many assumptions. We make assumptions and distort reality. We might assume that somebody would not want to help us. We assume that the problem that we have, the problem we're facing, however hard it is, we assume that that problem is ours and ours alone. We assume nobody else will help us. We assume we can't find a way to fix it. And we end up stuck in that problem forevermore. Why? Not because that problem can't be fixed. Not because we can't solve it. Not because other people won't help us. But just because we have assumed that. We've made those assumptions. We have distorted reality. Whereas in reality, if we reached out, I must stop saying that term. The only people who can validly use the term reach out are, of course, the four tops. Everyone else, we should stop using it.